Welcome to this APC mock interview, where today we're going to take a look at some of the questions that are specific to the project management pathway. And during the interview, we're going to look at each question in depth and explain some of the potential answers you can give. And I really hope this will improve your understanding of the core competencies and also give a better understanding of what to expect during the final assessment interview. We'll also cover some of the optional competencies towards the back end of the interview, so hopefully this will give an insight into these and may help you decide on which optional competencies to choose. Whilst I can't claim to be an expert or an APC assessor, I'm only speaking from my own experience of the APC and having helped a number of colleagues pass their APC over the last 6 years, and I really hope you find this video useful. So before we go into the main Q&A practice, let's first of all explain when the core competency questions will come up during your interview. You can see the interview starts with a brief introduction by the chairperson lasting 3 to 4 minutes, and this then leads into your case study presentation. Following your presentation, there are then 10 minutes of Q&A around your case study, followed by 25 minutes of questioning on the core competencies, and this is a section that we'll be focusing on today. Also remember that most of the questioning you face will be based on what you populate within your submission documents, so really try to base the majority of your revision around the topics that you have referenced within your submission. Always remember that the APC is personal to you, so please don't feel overwhelmed by the final assessment interview, as it is largely based on your own experience. If you are unsure about how to achieve each of the competencies or how to populate your summary of experience, I did do a separate video on this which I'd really recommend watching, and it may be the case that you're currently struggling to think of ideas for your case study. So again, I did do a separate video on this which I'd really recommend watching. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of the Q&A around the core competencies for the project management pathway. The first competency we'll take a look at is programming and planning. And the first question we'll take a look at under this competency is, what is concurrent delay? And to address this, we can say that concurrent delay is where one or more events occur at the same time that are caused by different parties. These events occur independently of each other, and both events have an effect on the completion date of the project. Concurrent delay can create issues, as it can be very difficult to determine whether the delay should allow the contractor to be granted an extension of time or whether they should be penalised through liquidated damages. In the case of City Inn versus Shepherd Construction, the Scottish Court of Appeal decided that apportioning delay was appropriate as there was no dominant cause, and they concluded that if a dominant cause can be identified, this must be considered as a relevant event resulting in the impact on the completion date. However, if no dominant cause can be identified, an apportionment should be made in a fair and reasonable way. We may also be asked a question on our knowledge of the critical path of a construction programme, and to address this, we can say that the critical path is defined as the longest sequence of activities that must be completed to successfully conclude a project. It is essentially the route which represents the bottleneck of the project, and the reduction of the duration of the project is only possible if the critical path activities can be shortened or accelerated. Activities on the critical path are known as critical activities because if they are delayed, then the whole project will be delayed. We may also be asked a question by the assessors on our understanding of the benefits of the critical path method, and to address this, we can first of all reference a reduction in delays. The critical path method helps identify the most important sequence of tasks in a project, and managers can use this information to reduce delays by optimising work along the critical path. It can also be used to visualise dependencies, and we could also mention that it really does help improve the organisation of the project. We can also say that it optimises efficiency, and by mapping the critical path, project managers get a better idea of important tasks in the project, and they can use this information to allocate resources more efficiently, adding and removing resources depending on the task's importance. And finally, we could also mention float calculation, and this determines how much a task can be delayed without impacting on the project schedule, and this is an important part of the critical path method, as calculating the float can help you distribute resources more effectively. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of how we would go about compiling a programme for a new project, and to address this, we can say that firstly we would look to understand the purpose of the programme and the level of detail required by the client. All activities would be identified, including project deliverables, key milestones and contractual requirements. The durations associated with each activity would be assigned, and if required, the activities would be allocated into each of the RIBA work stages. We would also identify the relationship between activities and link these accordingly, paying particular attention to critical path items. Any float and program contingency and critical path items would be identified within the program. And finally, we would issue the program to the team for comment and update as required. Another common question we may receive is to name each of the different RIBA work stages. And to address this, we would need to reference first of all stage 0, strategic definition, preparation and briefing, concept design, spatial coordination, technical design, manufacturing and construction, handover and use. A follow-on question we may receive on this is what the different RIBA work stages involve. And to address this, we could say that at stage 0, this is to determine the best means of achieving the client's requirements, and we should note that an open mind is required because a building might not be the most appropriate solution or even be viable. At stage 1, here we develop the detail of the brief and make sure that everything needed for the design process is in place before stage 2. This includes ensuring that the brief can be accommodated on the site. Stage 2 is needed to get the design concept right and making sure the look and feel of the building is proceeding in line with the client's vision, brief and budget. The purpose of stage 3 is to spatially coordinate the design before focus turns into preparing detailed information required for manufacturing and construction of the building. The information at the end of this stage needs to be coordinated sufficiently to avoid all but the most minor of iterations at stage 4 and to make sure that the planning application is based on the best possible information. Stage 4 is needed to develop the information required to manufacture and construct the building, and this requires information from the design team and the specialist subcontractors employed by the contractor, regardless of which procurement route is being used. Stage 5 is when the building is manufactured and constructed, and by stage 6 the building will be in use and the emphasis of the project will have switched to closing out any defects and completing the tasks required to conclude the building contract. And at stage 7, this is the period when the building is in use, lasting until the building reaches the end of its life. We may also be asked a question by the assessors on our understanding of the term project milestones, and to address this we can say that a project milestone is a task of 0 duration that shows an important achievement in a project. For example, successful completion of the substructure, achieving a waterproof building envelope, or topping out may be considered as significant milestones in a project. We'll now take a look at some questions on the development and project briefs competency. The first question we'll take a look at is what is a feasibility study? And to address this, we can say that a feasibility study is used to analyse and assess the sustainability and viability of a construction project. The end output of undertaking the feasibility study is to understand whether the project is viable by assessing the practical aspects of the project and by identifying its potential strengths and weaknesses. By undertaking the exercise objectively, an accurate view of the viability of the project can be determined, and this allows the project stakeholders to make informed decisions on any changes that may be required on the project and whether to proceed to the next stage. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the main components of a feasibility study, and to address this we can first of all say that this would consist of status of planning permission, for example whether the project has full or outline planning permission only. We would also expect to see a summary of legal and statutory issues, and this could include any land access agreements that are required or the requirement to obtain a road closure permit. We would expect an analysis of the budget relative to the client's requirements to determine whether the project remains affordable. We would also expect an assessment of site information provided by the client, and this could include geotechnical studies, ground contamination, availability of services, land easements and environmental considerations. We would also expect to see a summary of operational and maintenance issues, program considerations, and also an overview of procurement strategy, for example determining whether the project is going to be procured traditionally with the client retaining full control over the design, or whether this is going to be transferred to a third-party contractor via a design and build procurement route. The next question we'll take a look at is what is a project brief? And to address this, we can say that the project brief is crucial for defining the client's requirements for the project. The project brief will formally define the client's requirements and objectives in enough detail to facilitate the design and specification of the project. The project brief will then evolve as the design development of the project progresses from a concept design as more information becomes available from the design team and other project stakeholders. This will provide clarity for the design team, consultants and contractor and creates a foundation for the successful delivery of the project. We may also be asked a follow-on question on who prepares the project brief, and typically it is the client team who will gather information and compile the project brief. The consultant team will then typically review the brief to assist with its development. This is usually achieved by raising queries, engaging project stakeholders, and identifying any areas of missing information and working out next steps. For example, if little to no information is known about the existing site, then initial site investigations may be commissioned and their findings fed back into the project brief. The next question we'll take a look at is, can you explain what room data sheets are and why they may be required? To address this, we can say that room data sheets provide a detailed description of the finishes, fixed furniture and equipment, acoustic, mechanical and electrical requirements that are applicable to each room of the development. They are regarded as a key method of supplementing the main project brief and confirming the client requirements for each room or area in detail to the project team and main contractor. When a contract agreement is finalised, the room data sheets will typically form part of the employer's requirements. We'll now take a look at some questions focused on the managing projects competency. Under this competency, we may be asked a question on our understanding of a project execution plan. To address this, we can say that the project execution plan describes who does what and how, defining the policies, procedures and priorities that will be adopted. It could be described as a methodology to deliver the project. We may also be asked a follow-on question to this on our understanding of what a project execution plan should contain. We could say firstly that this would include a project definition, a project programme, a cost plan, cost management and accounting procedures, contracting and procurement strategy, roles, responsibilities and authorities, monitoring and reporting strategies, health and safety strategy, and any strategy for soft landings including business change and staff training requirements. The next question we'll take a look at is, what is a project audit? And to address this, we can say that a project audit provides an opportunity to review the project challenges, risks and processes and reflect if this is still meeting core objectives. The audit could be carried out mid-term or at the end of a project when lessons learned are established. We may also receive a level 2 question asking how we went about managing the performance of the project team. This is going to be personal to your own experience. However, to assist with addressing this, we could firstly reference use of performance appraisals against key performance indicators, monthly reviews and project reviews, constantly reviewing the team's scope of services and monitoring delivery of the project team. We could also make reference to weekly progress meetings where updates are requested from each discipline to provide updates on their deliverables. We may also be asked a high-level question on our view on what the role is of a project manager. We could firstly say that this is subject to my professional appointment with my client. Generally, my role is to manage the project team and drive the successful completion of the project and its objectives. We'll now take a look at some questions focusing on the construction technology competency. Under this competency, we may be asked a question on our knowledge of the different types of pile foundation methods. And to address this, we can first of all reference sheet piles, secant piles, board piles, and precast piles. We may then be asked a follow-on question on our knowledge of how board piles work, and to address this we could say that an auger is used to excavate the soil, concrete is then poured in along with any reinforcement that's required. Another question we may be asked is, what advice would you give a client who is wanting to know the technical disadvantages of a steel frame construction? And to address this we could say that we would make the client aware that the steel frame requires fire protection, parts or individual parts may need replacing over time. The price of steel is incredibly volatile and may create risks within the development. It also requires experienced, skilled builders, resulting in additional cost, and these kind of resources may be hard to acquire. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term buildability, and to address this we can say that buildability refers to the practicality and ease of construction associated with the design, and the main contractor's expertise around buildability should help to realise improvements to both ease the construction and realise the efficiencies that are available from the design. The next question we'll take a look at is, what are the benefits of off-site construction compared to in situ? And to address this we can say that safety hazards such as falls from height are more likely to occur on-site than in a factory environment. Quality of construction should be improved from the manufacturing process within a controlled environment. Sustainability can be improved through reduced waste and power generated from renewable sources. Speed of delivery can be increased as work off-site can be undertaken in parallel to works on-site. The next competency we'll take a look at is leading projects, people and teams. And the first question we'll take a look at under this competency is, what are the key differences between hard and soft skill sets? To address this we can say that soft skills are also known as interpersonal skills, and these have an emphasis on attributes such as communication, ability to offer motivation, decision making, empathy and leadership. Whereas hard skills are more technically focused and are easier to quantify. They include skills such as knowledge of foreign languages, qualifications, analytical skills and mental arithmetic skills. The next question we'll take a look at is what is the key difference between coordination and management? And to address this, we can say that coordination is to organise and sequence the project's deliverables in a logical and efficient order, whereas management is to exercise control over the project, its team members, or its deliverables. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the differences between leadership and management, and to address this, we can say that management is associated with controls over direct personnel and resources in a group according to an organisational structure and its associated chain of command. This is governed by principles or values that are already established within the organisation, whereas leadership does not require a formal organisational structure or set values. Leadership is more associated with setting a new direction or vision for a group that they will willingly follow, and a leader is a figurehead of the new direction. The next question we'll take a look at is what different management styles are you aware of? And to address this, first of all, we could make reference to an autocratic management style, and this management style provides a clear direction and motivates via persuasive skills, with feedback being provided on task performance. And managers typically do not consider the ideas and suggestions of people who report directly to them. We could also make reference to a democratic leadership style, and this is where managers welcome the feedback of individuals reporting to them. Employees are invited to discuss the pros and cons of plans and ideas, and this style of management encourages communication between the management and their team. We could also make reference to a laissez-faire management style, and this is where members of the management team are more hands-off and allow team members to make their own decisions. Superiors have an attitude of trust and reliance on their employees, and team members are empowered to take decisions and manage their own workload. The next question we'll take a look at is which attributes would you associate with a successful lead? This is again going to be very personal and based on your own experience, but to give an idea of how to address this, we could make reference to somebody who is able to encourage effective teamwork, an effective decision maker, someone who is well organised and able to plan ahead, a strong negotiator, an excellent communicator, good listening skills, somebody who leads by good example, integrity and trustworthiness, innovative and creative skills, and also problem-solving skills. We'll now take a look at the contract practice competency, and the first question we'll take a look at is what 8 conditions need to be met for a contract to be in place. And to address this, first of all, we can say that there must be an offer by one party, for example a tender, followed by acceptance of the other party. There must also be consideration, for example the exchange of money, services or goods. There must be intention to form a contract from both parties. There must also be legality of contracts, so this must not be prohibited by law. Both parties must have capacity to make the agreement. There must also be consent, where we have not used force or influence on vulnerable persons. And finally, we could also make reference to the possibility of performance, so both parties must be able to perform their obligations under the contract. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the advantages of standard forms of contracts over bespoke forms. And to address this, we can say that standard forms are written by legal experts, and that rights and obligations of each party are clearly set out to the required level of detail. Any risks should have been allocated evenly between the parties or appropriately, and parties should be familiar with the provisions of these forms, as there is greater consistency in application. The time and expense of preparing a fresh document for each occasion is avoided, and case law associated with standard forms is built up over time, and this provides a good source of knowledge and clarity of the terms. The next question we'll take a look at is when pricing an extension of time, what would you include for and at what rates? And to address this, we can say that when pricing an extension of time, I would include costs for prolongation of site cabins, site utilities and welfare, the facilities, management of staff, security, cleaners, and any inefficient use of labour and plant resources. And we'd also price for subcontract mobilisation costs, head office, finance charges, and loss of profit. The next question we'll take a look at is which factors would you consider when advising a client on which contract to use? And to address this, we can say that we would need to consider the size, value and type of project, the appetite for retaining or transferring any design risk, the need for cost certainty, and the need to introduce any design changes. We'd also need to consider the employer's experience and whether they were undertaking a series of repeat programs of works or a one-off project. Depending on your experience and what you've referenced in your submission, you may you may also be asked a question on why you should use a JCT minor works form of contract. And we could say here that this would be adopted on smaller basic construction programs where the work is of a straightforward nature, and they are normally adopted on schemes of a simple nature, for example retail fit-outs. Provisions for sectional completion and fluctuation on material price adjustments are limited in comparison to other JCT forms of contracts, and they are suitable for projects with a traditionally procured design. We may also be asked a question on when we would look to use a JCT design and build form of contract. And to address this, we can say that a D&B contract would be used for projects where the main contractor is retaining risk for both the design and construction of the project. They are to be adopted when the client has an appetite to transfer design and construction risk to the main contractor, and when the client does not necessarily want to exercise a strong control over the design. We could also say that they contain detailed provisions around sectional completion, insurances, and are used when the employer uses an agent in order to administer the contract. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term force majeure, and to address this we can say that force majeure events are usually defined as certain acts, events or circumstances beyond the control of the parties, for example natural disasters or the outbreak of hostilities. We may also be asked a follow-on question asking us to provide some examples of force majeure, and to address this we could reference either war, hostilities, invasion or act of foreign enemies, rebellion, revolution, insurrection or civil war, contamination by radioactivity, or acts or threats of terrorism. The next question we'll take a look at is on our knowledge of relevant events, and to address this we can say that a relevant event is an event on or off site that causes a delay to the completion of the works. For example, a relevant event could be something that happens during the design and manufacture process to delay things, or a site event that prolongs the installation of the works. We may then be asked a follow-on question asking us to provide some examples of a relevant event in the contract, and to address this we could reference first of all any variations or instructions, loss of damage caused by a specified peril, for example fire or flooding, any adverse weather conditions, deferment of possession of the site, intervention by the employer, or the carrying out of works by a statutory authority. We'll now take a look at the procurement and tendering competency. The first high-level question we'll take a look at is testing our knowledge of the main procurement methods available, and to address this we could make reference to traditional procurement, design and build, management contracting, construction management, or private finance initiative. The next question we'll take a look at is how do you advise your clients when selecting a procurement route? And to address this, we can say that when advising clients in the past, I've always been sure to give due consideration to the client objectives surrounding cost, time, design control, quality assurance, risk transfer. For example, a design and build procurement route offers a good risk transfer, but there are trade-offs against paying risk premiums and loss of design control when compared to traditional procurement. The next question we'll take a look at is of our understanding around how the traditional procurement method works. And to address under traditional procurement, the design is completed by the client's design team before competitive tenders are invited and a main contractor appointed to build what the designers have specified. The contractor takes responsibility and financial risk for the construction of the works to the design produced by the client's design team for the contract sum within the contract period. The client then takes responsibility and risk for the design and any design team performance. The next question we'll take a look at is on the project finance competency. What is the difference between project finance and project funding? And to address this, we can say that funding is a source providing money that will be used to pay for a project and/or its operating costs without cash and payback being required. Typical funding sources can include government grants, private donations, and income from a project such as rents or farebox revenue, whereas financing refers to arrangements to disperse capital today in return for future repayments. In summary, financing arrangements make temporary capital available for the development and make this available today, with future repayments being required. And financing often comes in the form of debt such as a mortgage or development loan. The next question we'll take a look at is on our understanding of financial statements and what components these typically include. And to address this, we can say that these typically would include reference to the contract sum value, the value of any instructed variations, the value of potential future variations such as advance warnings, the value of any claims, anticipated final account total, and the total of certified payments. We may also be asked a question on our knowledge of the purpose of a financial report, and to address this we can say that this is to report against budgeted values and act as a working cost check on the project budget. It's also there to provide the client with an understanding of any savings or additional monies required, and it's also there to report on contract progress against pre-contract predictions. The next question we'll take a look at is on our understanding of an adverse weather claims, and to address this we can say that adverse weather claims need to be supported by historical weather data taking into account the time of year and region the project is located in. The contractor's claim should be based on data from a recognised independent source such as the Met Office, and the rainfall and temperatures referenced would be compared against previous years to determine if these would adversely impact the progress of the main contractor. And we could also say that the prolongation period should be equivalent to the extent of extension of time being sought. The next question we'll take a look at is what are variations? And to address this, we can simply say that these are alterations or modifications to the design, quality or quantity of the contract works, to the site access or working conditions. We may also receive a follow-on question to this asking when variations might arise, and to address this we can say that this may be due to a change in specification, a discrepancy between contract documentation, a discrepancy with statutory requirements, any errors and omissions, and deficiencies within the employer's requirements. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of provisional sums. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the difference between defined or undefined provisional sums, and to address this we can say that defined provisional sums are those that are sufficiently well defined or detailed to allow the contractor to make allowances for them in their programming, planning and pricing. And this is where there will be sufficient design information to describe how the works in question are to be fixed to the building and in what quantity. The next question we'll take a look at is how would you advise your client on receipt of a claim from a contractor requesting additional prelim costs following the expenditure of a defined provisional sum. And in this scenario we would say that on receipt of the claim I would advise a client that this would not be a valid claim due to the provisional sum being defined, as all main contractor preliminary costs needed to expend the provisional sum are deemed included within the contract. That brings us towards the end of the Q&A practice. I really hope you found this video useful, and please be sure to subscribe to this channel to receive ongoing APC support.